Hi, my love. Welcome to the Gemma Hanley podcast. My name is Gemma. I'm your host. This is the space where I have honest conversations about overcoming anxiety and overwhelm so that you can calm your nervous system and feel really confident and happy and calm from within yourself. Along the way, I share my own stories of holistically healing 23 years of anxiety and depression myself. And so, if you're a woman seeking answers to perfectionism, people pleasing, burnout, resistance, you may love, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Let's begin. And before we begin, I want to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which I am recording from, which is the Gubbi Gubbi tribe. And I want to extend that acknowledgement to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as anybody of Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander heritage watching this replay. Hey, babe, welcome back to the potty. How are you? How is your being? I am very excited. This episode feels like maybe the easiest, most fun one I have or will have ever recorded. Answering your questions is something I just froth. I love it. My being is also extremely sweaty. It is insanely hot up here, which is a big deal for me to be saying. I'm missing my hometown of Melbourne for its freshness, which is exactly why I left it. But we're here, we're recording, sweat and all. This podcast episode is a continuation of the last one. It's part 2 of self-sabotage and resistance. And the plan for this episode is to answer your questions that came through on Instagram, of which there are quite a few. So I'm not sure that we will definitely get through every single one of them. However, something I am certain of is that if you've asked a question, hearing the response to one that was similar to yours, or even having listened to the last episode is 100% going to give you something to work with. One of the reasons I love a intimate group coaching scenario, where you are exposed to conversations and questions from other women and you get to hear the responses to those questions, is that you take away value that you did not even know you needed or wanted. And so whilst I might not get through all of these questions, there will be layers to the answers that I do give to the questions that I do ask that will be valuable. So I've got my phone here and I'm just going to flip through and see what's in here and see where we go. I can see 2 questions here that are really similar, which is, what is causing self-sabotage? How do I overcome it? Why do we self-sabotage? How to stop it? Those are the questions that I covered in the first episode. So if you missed that, or if you haven't listened to it yet, an invitation to go back and do so. It'll give you a really nice foundational understanding to draw from and to probably make more sense of the answers that you'll be listening to throughout this episode. Let's begin, my love. All right. So the first question I have here is procrastination, sometimes with work, but maybe just need to be kinder about progress. And then their question was cut off, the rest of it. Where I want to go with this one is, I love it when I'm asked a question that already has the answer in it. Yeah. And sometimes women won't be aware of this because they're not familiar with trusting themselves or letting their sense, their knowing lead them. But part of the answer to this, I imagine, is that there is space to be kinder to yourself. There is space to trust yourself in the process. There is space to acknowledge how far you have already come, my love. And a beautiful, beautiful ritual that I love for this. I heard it once upon a time years ago at a seminar that I went to, but the practice of self-acknowledgement. Yeah. if you think of anybody external to yourself, and let's say they're showing up and they're doing their best and they're contributing to what it is that you want. Yeah. And all that you are reflecting back to them is, oh, but you haven't done this part. Could you do it a bit quicker? Oh, I thought it would be better than that. I thought you'd be done by now. How do you think they're going to feel? Right? Do you think they're going to feel inspired and energized and connected to continuing to serve you, to continuing to show up to you? Right? This is often how women are speaking to themselves while they're in the process. Yeah. Rather than acknowledging themselves fully and celebrating themselves for what it is they've already achieved, they look at all the things that have not been done, all the things that they are yet to achieve. And interestingly, from like a benefit or a gains perspective, or how that is working for that woman, is it's often being used as motivation or as fuel to keep going, right? If I acknowledge myself too much for what I've already done, I might get lazy, or I might decide, this is enough. Like I've done a good job. I can have a rest now. And so they're using this like undermining and forceful and bullying and urgency and minimizing and dismissive energetic in response to themselves to help them to be better, to do better, to motivate themselves more, right? It was 100% a strategy that I used to have, right? I would motivate myself out of fear or out of lack or out of scarcity or out of telling the story. If I don't keep going, I won't have it. And so I'm just going to invite you, the woman who has asked this question, to consider how that person outside of you might respond. Yeah, the person that I've just used in this analogy or this visualization I've given to you, that's helping you, that's serving you, that's showing up to your vision. How might their energetic shift if you were to applaud them? How might their desire and their ability to genuinely want to be in motion towards serving you and helping you and progressing your vision, how might that desire increase if you were to acknowledge them and celebrate them and validate them and see them and hear them, right? Because it's going to be exactly the same if you begin acknowledging yourself, if you begin seeing and hearing and celebrating and validating and loving on yourself. Yeah. And so this ritual that you can try is 3 things that you appreciate from the day. 3 things that you have already accomplished, you've already achieved in the day. And 3 things that you love about yourself and you admire about yourself. And I love to invite a woman to include in those 3 things that she loves and admires about herself, one that relates to her physical body. Yeah. And that's often an edge. That's often uncomfortable. And so begin practicing this. I'll often do this in bed at night just before I switch out the lights. You can write it down or you can just say it out loud. But that's my answer and that's my advice to that question. And before we go on to the next one, a little disclaimer that I meant to say at the start. Obviously, there's no back and forth here, right? So when I'm coaching women, I'll be getting super curious and asking them questions and, what does this mean? And tell me more about this part. And then we start diving down and then I'll check in. Is this landing? How's this feeling? What are you noticing as I'm speaking about this? The potty does not allow for that. And so, yeah, I'm just going to be answering on a very surface level, based on the questions that I've been gifted here to work with. Okie dokie. Question number 2. I get these moments where I'm like, yes, I will do this and that and have these goals. And then I don't see them through, especially like healthy eating and exercise. Okay. So where I want to go with this one is I would be asking this woman, you know, how intentionally have you set these goals? Yeah. Are they goals that you've sort of just plucked out of thin air? Are they things that you're like, that would be good to have? Or have they been like deeply considered desires that you sat down and accessed from within yourself and you know is a very, very high priority for you in your life right now? Because there's a big difference between how we will show up between those two things. So that's the first thing that I would say. How intentionally have you set those goals? The second thing that I want to speak into is that a huge part of how I coach, how I live, how I view the world is that it's a very holistic experience. And so when we want a goal or when we want have a vision, we want to achieve something, say in the area of health, that is not separate to how you are relating to your money and wealth. That is not separate to what's happening in your relationships. It's not separate to what lifestyle and play and pleasure looks like in your life. Yeah. It's not separate to the career or the business that you're running. It is not separate to your core purpose for being here in this lifetime. And so there's two things about that. One is, how much are you also simultaneously asking from yourself in these other areas of life, right? Because often what I will see is this unrealistic expectation of how much we want to be shifting and changing and growing in multiple areas of life at once. Or alternatively, I'll see a conflict, right? So this person might say that healthy eating and exercise is really important to them, right? But then they might have a work schedule that is just outrageously full, right? And so by the end of the day, they feel exhausted, or they don't have the neurological capacity to think about going and doing a handstand class or going to an R&B dance class and learning the moves, right? So it's really important to look at what is happening holistically in our life. What are the timeframes that I'm setting around different visions and different goals? And are they almost like, is there a conflict? Is one thing that I really want stopping me from having the other thing? And so I'm kind of not getting either of them at any point in time. That's definitely something to be looked into. In terms of healthy eating and exercise, I'm going to dive into that a little bit more in a question that pops up later. Yeah. And I want to remind you, all of these questions that I'm asking are off the back of you already having the knowledge and already having the understanding of what I've covered in the previous podcast. It's not going to add value for anyone for me to sit here and repeat those concepts, repeat the function and the purpose of self-sabotage and resistance and go into how that psychology and subconscious pattern operates, because we've already had that conversation. So the answers that I'm giving here are going to give you a little bit more in addition to that, right? So I'm answering these questions through the lens that your ability or inability to sit with discomfort, to sit with things feeling hard and messy and difficult and frustrating and wildly exposing and unknown, 100% is going to play into your ability to show up at work or to follow through on these goals around health and exercise. Okay. The next question I'm going to ask is kind of a nice follow on from that one. So how can you tell what's self-sabotage and what's okay? Yeah. And this woman's put an example in here of eating pizza once a week. I love this question. The first part of it is it's not objective, it's subjective. Yeah. Meaning it depends what the individual desires. It depends what the true desire that this woman has. Like, what is she wanting to achieve, right? Because without that reference point, it's hard for us to know what would be working towards that and what would be working against it or away from it. Yeah. And so that's a question, is like, if you're not clear on what it is that you want to achieve, what it is that you want to feel, what it is that you want to have more of, the woman it is that you want to be, it's going to be really difficult for you to be able to reference, is this resistance? Is this in the direction away from what it is that I want? Or is this part of what can factor in and what can be included to get to where I want to go? The other thing that I wanted to say about this, let me think for just a minute, is that I want you to check what's the energetic of the motivation behind what that desire is that I've asked you to clarify and I've asked you to identify. Yeah. Are you wanting it out of fear? Are you wanting it out of, I'm not enough without this? Are you wanting it out of, I can't be happy until I have this thing? Or is the energetic more of, this feels so aligned to me. I'm being drawn and called towards this. This feels like it is my truth. This feels like a really pure, healthy, rewarding, fulfilling expression of the woman that I am. Yeah. And I think that another angle that this question, I'm just doing my best to guess, like, why does this woman want this question answered? What's being asked behind this language? And part of what that might be is maybe there is actually some data collection to be done, right? So sometimes we will have a desire that's true for us, and we don't actually have the facts or the knowledge or the data of what that's going to require, what that's going to ask of us, what that's going to take. Right. And so for us to know, am I working towards this, or am I maybe off in no man's land in this direction that I've like assumed is going to take me closer to what I want, but it's not, is to do some research, right? So you might reach out to people and ask them on the topic or on the desire. So my advice or my invitation would be to inquire with someone who already has the outcome that it is that you want, because their neurology and their nervous system has gone there, versus somebody who might have just read about it or studied it or talks about it a lot, but they're not actually an embodiment of the result that you want. And turn on your curious mindset, turn up the curiosity and the creative thinking and the open-mindedness, and ask the questions that you need to ask to get the answers that you need to know whether, is this behavior or is this thing moving me closer towards where I want to go, or is it actually putting a buffer or a hurdle between where it is that I want to go? Okay, my love, the next question I have here: how to move the energy of I can't, I'm not good enough. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So something that is really freaking cool is that when we move into adulthood, typically speaking, we will have experienced enough cycles of a problem in our life to realize that a better strategy or more discipline or more force is actually not the thing that is going to allow this problem to shift, right? Because we'll have tried enough different strategies, we'll have tried enough forcing ourselves, bullying ourselves, disciplining ourselves into doing it, and it's not getting the result. And so what we get to realize, and the conversations that we probably start moving towards or getting curious about, and that I have with women all the time, is, okay, there's something at a deeper subconscious level here that is playing out a pattern that is impacting all of the choices, all of the thoughts, all of the behaviors and the decisions that are rolling out in my world right now. And those imprint years and those early stages of life, typically between 0 to 7 years old, we're very, very impressionable. The critical faculty in our brain hasn't come online yet. So we don't have that ability to apply logic and reason and make sense of things. Yeah. We're just downloading all of the assumptions, all of the offerings from our environment and predominantly from our primary caregivers. And like I said, we don't have the ability to question that. And we believe that everything is about us, right? And so whether it's been directly said to us or whether it's been implied or whether we have misinterpreted a tone of voice or a behavior or a scenario, and we've taken it to mean, I can't, I'm not enough. Yeah. It's often not until adulthood that has played out so many times that we can actually hear it and we can actually see it, and we can tell that, yeah, a better strategy is not going to shift that. There's actually something to be looked at a deeper psychological level within ourselves, which sounds serious, but actually a huge part of that is taking a step back and realizing, oh, if I was to give you the analogy of being offered a plate of food, so someone reaching over and offering you something on a plate of food. Yeah. You have the ability to say, yeah, I'm going to take that and I'm going to eat that and put that inside of me. Or, oh, thank you, but no, thank you. Yeah. And our concepts or perception of self get to be the same. Yeah. But we have to first realize that consciously or subconsciously, so within our awareness or outside of our awareness, at some point in time, we've taken an offering from another person. Yeah, we might not have realized it, but it's what's happened. And we actually don't have to keep it. We can change it if we want to. Right. And that is a very powerful step, because what it does is it puts you in the position of power, and it puts you in the position of making a choice, and it puts you in a position of taking a stand of what is the concept of self or perception of self that I want to live my life from. Now, one of the things that is going to need to be untangled as part of that, and that plays into resistance and could be playing out in this, that you have a perception of as self-sabotage, is playing into that concept of self that I'm not enough, I can't do this. It is like a safety blanket. It's like a safety net, right? Whether you realize it or not. And so it forms part of that coping mechanism that I talked about in the prior podcast of numbing, removing ourselves from discomfort. Even though it creates pain in and of itself, when we believe or tell the story, oh, like, I can't do this, I'm not good enough for this. What's actually happening is you're removing yourself from the space of, whoa, like, if I was to progress with this thing and I don't know how to do it, if I was to progress with this thing that like strips back every element of certainty I've had about who I am and what I'm good at, because I'm doing something that I'm the beginner at, I'm doing something that I'm fumbling, I'm awkward, I'm falling over, I'm dropping things, I'm making mistakes, I'm saying things, and afterwards I'm like, oh, that was a pretty weird, funny thing to say, wasn't it? That can be more for the nervous system and be a higher level of discomfort than sitting in the familiar pain of, oh, well, I just can't. Oh, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be able to have that. Both are painful, but one pain is going to be more familiar to you. It's going to be more certain to you. And so it's meeting that need of certainty, right? And so, we're having a very surface level conversation here, but where I would encourage you to begin exploring and getting curious about is in those moments of me allowing myself to step out of my comfort zone, where that perception or concept or the energy of self is, I can't, I'm not good enough, I don't know how. How can you bring certainty into the piece for yourself in a new way so that you don't need to cling on to that story of I can't, I'm not enough? Yeah. How can you create a more empowering or a more rewarding safety net for yourself? I'm going to leave that one there. Okay. Next question. Procrastination, talking yourself out of doing something because it's above your upper limit. So for anybody who doesn't understand the concept of upper limit, it's basically the upper limit of what you have allowed yourself to experience in life before, whether that is a skill, but more so the upper limit of what the level of joy, happiness, ecstasy, fulfillment, love, freedom, bliss, appreciation for life. Yeah. The level at which you allow yourself to feel that before it becomes terrifying or before it becomes scary to actually be feeling those things. And for a lot of people, the reason why that upper limit is there is because they feel like if that joy, bliss, ecstasy, happiness, fulfillment, love was to be taken away, they wouldn't know how to cope. They wouldn't know how to function. They don't believe or don't feel that they would be capable of navigating that or recreating it for themselves in a new way. Right. And so there's this protective upper limit of like, yes, let me feel happiness. Let me feel joy. Let me feel ecstasy. Let me feel bliss. Oh, but not too much. Yeah. Because then it becomes scary. Then it becomes overwhelming. Then it moves into this space of, fuck, that is fucking scary if that ever went missing out of my life again. I've had this conversation with a few friends who have children, where the depth and the size of the love that they feel for that little human can actually be super overwhelming, and feel scary. So that is the overview of what the question is asking. My phone's locked. Just give me a mini. Okay, talking yourself out of doing something because it's above the upper limit. So the first question I would ask this woman is, how much do you really want this thing? Yeah. Sometimes what can happen is that we say we want something, but we're not actually prepared to do all the things it would take to have it. Yeah. And again, I'm going to reference the prior podcast. Change is hard. Growth is hard. And the key is not to figuring out how to get rid of the hard. Yeah. The key is figuring out, how do I be with that? How do I meet that? How do I open to that? How do I respond to that so that I don't need to avoid it? I can journey through what this growth or change is asking of me. Right. And so if we really, really want something, and it is challenging us, it will be challenging us neurologically, but it will be challenging our nervous system, our emotions, our feelings, our sense of safety. It will be asking us, most likely, if it's significant enough, to step into something that feels risky, that feels vulnerable, that feels exposing. And so if you want to stay safe, inverted commas, if you want to avoid feeling those things like the risk, the exposure, the pain, the discomfort, the mess more than you actually want to have this thing, then you're probably not going to have it, right? Because there's no acceptance of what it's actually going to take. And so two things here. One is, I definitely invite you to explore the idea of believing that you are capable of recreating anything that you might lose or that you might let go of or that might go missing. Yeah. What I mean by that is, if you were to have this thing that would just light up your life, that would bring you so much joy, that if for any reason it did go missing, that you would have the ability to navigate that. And you don't have to know how, but the ability could be, well, I know I could ask for help. I know I could figure out the question that I need an answer to. I know I could find a podcast on the topic and listen to it. I know I could read a book on it. I know I have a friend that I could ask for advice, right? And then the second thing, I ask you to get really curious about what stories are you telling about having this thing, or what stories are you telling about why you can't have this thing, or what stories are you telling about why it shouldn't be this hard, right? This has been very alive for me this week. Something that I have been back and forth with, and that I'm being called into, but I've still been in the phase of like resistance, resentment, wishing it was different. Which is like just, it's an essential, like if you are growing in a significant, big, bold way, that's going to be present because life is going to be asking things of you that you can't even fathom, like you've never done before. You don't have a reference point before. And so I've been playing in that space this week, specifically with business. 6 months ago, I was in this space and I didn't expect to be back here this quickly. And so it took me a bit to recognize it and have awareness to it, that my business was asking for the next level of leadership. My business was asking for the next level of, the archetype that I've begun adopting this week is, the warrior woman, the wild warrior woman. And so because I wasn't recognizing that, I was asking questions, and they weren't really even questions I was asking. I was saying them, but I didn't care for the answer. Like, why is this so hard? And why is this being asked of me again? And I shouldn't be at this stage, and it should be easier. And I feel like I just grew out of this kind of stage, right? And what I've realized is it almost feels for me like, oh, I thought I was running a business, but actually now that I'm managing team, and now that I have far more financial responsibilities, and I'm needing to invest far more money into the business, which is money that I like in my mind and in my vision, because I hadn't reached this upper limit. I hadn't experienced this before. In my vision and in my mind, I thought that when the business was generating this much revenue, my personal lifestyle would be changing more. And what I'm learning is that the majority of that revenue actually needs to go straight back into the business so that the business can continue, because it's become bigger than me, and I like more resources are required, right? And so I had to be able to recognize what was being asked of me, and step out of the story. First, recognize the stories I was telling around it, but then be able to step out of that and ask myself, well, what do I want to do about this? How do I want to respond to this? Right? Because I'm sitting, and when I looked for those stories, one of the stories was, oh, like I just want to be like spending money on things that bring me joy. I want to be up-leveling my lifestyle. I want to be contributing in different ways. I want to furnish this home that I've moved into. I want to the aesthetic of my home space is something that brings me enormous pleasure, right? And I'm like, I want to be in that pleasure. And then simultaneous to that, it's like, oh, really? Like, I'm just sending this money back into the business. And so to come back into my power, and the conversation I had around how much do I, really want what is present in my life right now was, okay, well, either spend that money on what's going to bring you joy and back yourself that you'll regenerate it. And put yourself in a position that is like, fits into the category of what feels like unnecessary risk, unnecessary irresponsibility. Or see this season and step into this season in business for what it is, right? It's a regeneration. It is, I should have got my journal and sat it here beside me before I didn't know I was going to have this conversation. It is like, it's pre-expansion mode. My nervous system and my neurology is being exposed right now to something I've never done before, right? And so a lot of this week, in the business, like the running of the business, the growth of the business, which is completely separate to coaching and being with my clients. But the running of the business, I've been like needing to really sit back and get curious about what even are the next steps to doing this? Like, what is the direction that I need to take? What are the projects I need to be focusing on right now? What's the data and the information and the knowledge that I need to be able to progress those projects? Right. And so if I wasn't willing to sit with that discomfort and feeling like I have no idea what I'm doing in terms of growing a business, and welcome and open to this feeling of, oh, I thought I was running a business, and now I feel like I'm just like being initiated into the real mechanics of that, the real experience of that, then I wouldn't be able to expand into this upper limit that is something that is going to bring me so much more of what I want in all areas of my life. I'd be locked at this level that I'm at now. And I can tell you a big part of that has been feeling the procrastination, feeling the resistance. Yeah, that is there in the body. And if there's an unwillingness to feel that, there is no journey to expanding that upper limit. Yeah, there's like, you cannot skip this. There's been, conversations where I've been in tears with my own mentor and teacher and coach. There's been grief, there's been frustration, there's been anger, there's been resentment, there's been sadness. Yeah, a huge part of the grief is like, fuck, like I wasn't gearing up for my business to need to be this much of a focus of my time and energy and love and attention, the growth side of my business for the next 6 months. That wasn't the vision. And so, yeah, I've needed to grieve that. I've needed to feel sad around that. I've needed to feel angry about that. And then that's made space for the fear of, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. How can I lean into the first steps and have a guess and get curious about what that might be, and then feel the fear around that, feel the discomfort around that, right? So these are all ways that we can begin expanding into our upper limit, for sure. And curiously questioning, like circling back to the whole questioning of your capability to navigate if that risk, right? Because it's often the risk of loss. So in this scenario that I'm sharing with you, it feels like financial risk. Yeah. Dropping into the body, connecting with yourself, connecting with your ability to navigate fucking anything that is put on your path, and allowing the fear to be alongside that. Yeah, allowing the discomfort and the nervousness and the uncertainty of growth to sit alongside this, knowing that you are capable, you are brilliant, you are amazing. Yeah, you are resourceful. You can ask for what you need. You can ask for what you want. Allowing space for both. Interestingly, I did not look at the time when I started this, and I don't have a timer, so I don't know how long we're going for, but that's okay. I've answered the questions on the first page. We're moving on to the second one. This is a beautiful one. Friendships. They get to a point and then I leave before they will. So I'm just going to straight up reflect back some of what I see in terms of the benefits or the gains of choosing that behavior, of choosing that response. Of course, here we go again. I'm just going to reiterate it, discussed in the prior podcast. Your ability to sit with discomfort, your ability to be vulnerable is an enormous player in you being able to change this and change your response to this, as is your communication skills. Right. One of my fucking favorite topics that I love teaching on is communication and boundaries and connection in relationships. And so how we become a powerful communicator in our own relationships is by knowing ourselves. knowing what is it that I need right now that's feeling unmet? What is it that's important to me right now that is feeling challenged? Yeah. And honoring and being present with the fact that when you logically, intellectually, consciously look out into the world, you might not be able to find evidence that something's being challenged or something's being unmet, but it is this deep feeling in your body and within you, of fear. And so you get to name that, right? And vulnerability is the source of depth and connection in our relationships. And it's contagious. Every time I open, every time I speak from my heart, every time I take a risk and I'm vulnerable and I don't know how it's going to be received, I invite myself to be received that way, right? Because I'm giving someone the opportunity. But I'm also inviting others to do the same. And so when I soften, others can soften too. And when I make it safe, when I make it safe to speak about fears and to speak about what I'm like a limitation I might be feeling or something that's feeling uncomfortable or uncertain for me, I make it safe for others to do the same as well. I give them the opportunity to actually meet me with where I'm at. Yeah. And so there will be a lot of reasons why you benefit and gain from not doing that, right? You don't have to open your heart. You don't have to risk rejection. You don't have to feel disappointment in your body. Yeah. And again, when we talk about that, an instant response might be, oh, like feeling disappointment isn't going to kill me. I'm okay with that. Yeah. But do you believe that you're capable of recreating a friendship or recreating the opportunity to have what it is you have in these friendships if they were to be let go of, if they were to go missing? And when you say you're capable of feeling disappointment, is that a factual, logical assessment, or do you have the practice skill and the nervous system resilience and skill and practice at actually doing that? Yeah, actually allowing yourself to feel sadness, to feel disappointment if rejection does fall on your path, right? The other thing that can feel helpful and that I love around this, so I'm bouncing between the two ladies. I'm wanting to give the feedback on like what is playing into this, but then I'm also wanting to give you some value and resources on how to start moving with it. So one of the things that I love is that, anybody that can't love me unconditionally in my most pure expression, in the truth of who I am, when I am showing up with love and respect, but also pure honesty, and I'm having the hard and honest conversations, anybody who can't be present with me in that isn't available for that, can't hold me in that, they're not meant for me anyway. And so thank you, but no thank you, right? I release them and willingly, because they're creating space for the person and the people and the relationships that can love me unconditionally, that I do get to go to the depths of connection with. And that lights up my soul. That is what I'm here for. So there's a few little pointers on that one. Okay, the next question is using techniques that don't work for me because it's the latest trend. Beautiful. So one of the things we gain immediately or benefit from immediately by doing this is we don't have to think for ourselves. We don't have to figure out what we stand for. We don't have to figure out who we are, what's true for us, which also means very conveniently, we don't have to hold ourselves responsible if it doesn't go to plan or if we don't like it. Yeah, we don't have to meet ourselves in that feeling of a story that we might tell that we've failed or that we've gotten it wrong or that we haven't done the inverted commas right thing. Yeah, it puts a bit of a buffer. Like we get to say, oh yeah, like, well, I just did what everyone else was doing, or I did what was being reflected back to me, or I did what I saw was the majority were doing. Yeah, I trusted the majority. Can't help but say that this very much links into society, right? And conformity, right? I went with the masses. They were doing it, so I thought it would be okay. They were doing it, so it seemed like the right thing to do. Yeah. As opposed to actually taking the time to think for yourself, to do your own research, to become an advocate for what your needs are and what it is that you want to stand for, and the energetic and the values and the beliefs and the legacy that you want to be known for and to leave behind, right? That's an imprint of your soul, not from conforming. And so this is very much a values conversation, right? When we know what we value, when we know what the highest priorities are to us in life, when we know how we want to show up and who we want to be and what actually feels really good and congruent and true for us in our body, even if that then causes a feeling of conflict because others don't like it, others can't understand it, others don't accept it. When we know what our values are, when we know what we stand for as an individual, it becomes very, very easy to make big decisions quickly. Yeah. You get to that sense, you're trusting that feminine sense within you of like, that is a no for me, that is a yes for me. Yeah. And you get this clear line of communication and feedback from your body, from your heart, from your intuition, from your subconscious of, okay, this is a yes for me, or this is a no for me, or this isn't a yes, this isn't a no. And I need to go inside. I need to do the inner work on figuring out, why is it that I'm not clear on this? Yeah. And so in a busy world where immediate gratification and shiny objects are often chased, conforming or using the decisions of others can be very convenient at times, even though off the back of it, you have the experience of realizing it doesn't work for you. Okay. All right. Here's the question I'm going to answer next. Wanting to do things to help my health, but not doing them. How to work out what's stopping me. Cool. Beautiful. This is going to be a deep dive, yeah, for you, my love. And it's going to require some high quality questions. Yeah. So some of those might be high quality questions and connection with your subconscious, which is in the body. Yeah. The subconscious is home to your feelings, your emotions, your memories, right? It's that part of you that will sometimes have an answer that drops in and you're like, where did that come from? Or that doesn't make complete sense logically, but I can tell that's what I need to go and do. Or I can tell that that is true. I can tell it's going to be expensive if I don't follow that feeling, that sense. Yeah, that this is something I need to do, or this is something I need to stop doing, right? And so high quality questions and then tapping into that innate intelligence within yourself. I'm going to tell a couple of stories here that I think this woman will be able to draw from, and that might just trigger some responses within you, some answers within you as you're listening. So I was coaching a woman once, and one of the goals that she had was achieving a healthy weight, right? And when we talked about her relationships in her life, her past, different significant events or memories or emotional moments, yeah, significant emotional moments that linked into her body weight, being able to achieve a healthy weight, one of the things that came up was that her mum was very judgmental. Yeah, not necessarily in her direction, but she got to observe her mum critiquing other people or sharing her opinion about other people all of the time. Yeah. And that she got to observe her mum have flattering reviews of women who dressed well, who took pride in their appearance, who were fit, who were a healthy weight. And she got to observe her mum speaking more down or having more negative reflections of women who perhaps were otherwise. Yeah, so an unhealthy weight or didn't prioritize their appearance, whether that be the way they dressed or whether their hair was done nicely or whether they wore makeup or what jewelry they were wearing, right? And so one of the things that we ended up exploring is getting in the way of her achieving her healthy weight. Yeah, so it felt like self-sabotage or it felt like resistance at a subconscious level. Yeah, so she wasn't able to be aware of this until we started using some high quality questions and I was able to share some reflections with her, was that part of her remaining an unhealthy weight was this protest behavior and a way that she didn't have to conform to this measure of worth that she enormously disliked that her mother used. Yeah. So by maintaining an unhealthy weight, she didn't have to conform to fitting into the measure or the category her mother would use to deem her worthy or to speak positively about her. So she got to be a stand against what her mum stood for. She got to protest. She got to, instead of speaking up and using her voice, she used her body as a symbol of what she stood for, right? But at the same time, it was causing her insane pain because ultimately it wasn't her deepest desire, right? And so to be able to let go of that and to move through that resistance and that behavior that could be perceived as self-sabotage, there was a lot of feeling, yeah, that needed to happen. There was the need to cultivate the skill of speaking up, yeah, having hard and honest conversations, or even just using her voice in a way that expressed what was true for her so that she didn't have to use her body as a symbol of that anymore, right? And there was a lot of owning that regardless of how other people are showing up in the world, she gets to choose what measures she uses. She gets to choose, how she scores worth, how she sees worth, what her measures of success and happiness are, right? Another example, a woman that I was coaching around depression, yeah, and deep sadness. We realized together through the same process that one of the ways she was gaining and benefiting from staying depressed was that growing up, there was a total, there was no capacity. There was no space for anything other than being the good girl, being happy, being cheery, being pleasing to others around her. Yeah. And the language that was often reflected in her direction was something like, keep smiling, or make sure you're always smiling, or good girls smile. Yeah. And so again, it was like this unknowingly this protest behavior that I'm not going to do what someone else is dictating to me. Yeah. No one else is in charge of me. Nobody else gets to tell me how I show up and how I live my life. I don't like how I'm being treated. I don't feel respected. I don't feel like it's safe or okay, or I don't feel like my full expression is being welcomed into this space. So let me take it into my own hands and make sure that I'm going to show you that I express however I want. I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to play along with your rules. Yeah, I get to live life by my rules. Again, was not something she was consciously aware of, was not ultimately serving her because she was suffering the consequence, right? By living this life that was muted and that was void of joy and happiness and connection and feeling deeply alive from within inside. But it was the most resourceful way that she had carried through life to be in a version of her truth. Yeah, that she doesn't have to be the good girl and she's not willing to be the good girl, right? But there were other ways that she could meet that need and that she could express in that way without having to continue with depression. Yeah. So there are a couple of stories of how deep resistance can run at a subconscious level in these patterns. And having these types of conversations is just one of my favorite things to do, especially with myself as well, because they unlock what feels like stuckness and they allow us to see, okay, I would have to be willing to let go of this way of meeting my need or this way of getting things done. And I would need to be willing to adopt a new way that might feel scary. It might feel outside of my comfort zone. But then there's going to be this facilitation of me having more of what it is that I say I want. Now that I have that information, I get to choose, am I willing to do that? Am I ready to do that? What skills will I need to be able to do that? Yeah. Again, we're looping back these skills of being able to feel and participate with and understand all emotions. Yeah. To be able to hold discomfort in your body and to feel resilient in that, to feel safe in that, to come to the place where you deeply know that discomfort is a very, very normal, healthy, appropriate part of life. And that if you want to value growth and if you want change and transformation and stimulation and adventure and spontaneity in your life, that it is a skill that you will need. Okay, next question I'm going to go to. How to help with overthinking and thinking yourself out of happiness, good things. So again, this is in the nature of protectiveness as well. But what I want to speak to here is any time you notice that you're upstairs, yeah, meaning you're in your head, right? That's the monkey mind, it's the fixated thinking, it's the internal narrative, the self-talk is really loud and you're feeling like you're controlled by it and you can't escape it and you're like, how do I stop this? Overthinking, right? That is simply a sign that there is something to be felt in your body. And the most powerful way, and I would suggest the only way to truly create like function, harmony, ease upstairs in the brain, in the mind, in the head, is by coming down into the body and feeling what is there. Yeah. It is showing you that something is there to be felt. Something is there. And in our emotions, yeah, there's intelligent messages. Our emotions are intelligent messages asking us to pay attention, loving attention to something that is super important to us. And so the noise in the mind is just another example of, hey, it's time to come down into the body. There is a boundary being crossed here, yeah, by you or by another person. There is a shift in the evolution of who you are that has taken place beneath the surface, which means you now have different needs, you have different desires, and the way life is playing out right now is no longer your highest self-expression. It's no longer most true for you. It's no longer the thing that is most right for you. There's a challenging conversation to be had. There's a decision that you need to make. Yeah. There's a story that you need to question. There is grief from the past that is feeling safe to come up and be felt. Yeah. And it's being stimulated by something in your present day world. These are just some of the examples of what is waiting for you or might be waiting for you as intelligent information in the body when you feel into the emotion and allow yourself to be shown. Yeah. And so overthinking is nothing more than a signal to come down into the body and be with yourself. Right? And so if you reflect and look, what you'll probably see when there's overthinking in play is also an avoidance of self. Yeah, whether that is through the use of screens, food, scrolling, avoiding going to bed at night so you're really tired, because when you go to bed at night, like, you're left alone with yourself in the darkness. Yeah, it's the time of day or night, rather, where we're least willing to distract. We're least willing to be stimulated by something else. Yeah. Whether it's overworking, whether it's overtraining, whether it's fixation on diet, whether it's going on, 5 dates every week, whether it's sex. Yeah, there are so many different ways we abandon and avoid and disconnect and break trust with ourselves. And so, my love, if overthinking or if a noisy, fixated mind is something that you're struggling with, I invite you to come down into the body and get curious about what is there to be felt and what is that there to show you. Okay, these next 2 questions I'm going to answer simultaneously. One is sleep procrastination and resistance. So I'm imagining that is resistance to going to bed at night at a great time so that you feel super restored and energetic when you wake up in the morning. And the other is reaching for the unhealthy food when I know it's the wrong choice. I have a question back to both of these that I want you to begin practicing in the exact moment. So in the moment that you're walking to the fridge or to the pantry, yeah, or desiring to, in the moment where you're scrolling on your phone or you're finding some task around the house and you have that moment where you're like, if I don't go to bed right now, I'm going to be really tired tomorrow. Or, fuck, I should be going to bed right now, but it's not what I'm doing. I want you to ask yourself, what do I get to avoid right now? What is it that I don't want to feel and that I'm going to numb and distract and avoid and tell a story that, like, oh, like, it doesn't matter, like, I'll do it differently tomorrow. It doesn't matter. I'm probably making this into a bigger thing than what it is. Yeah. What do you get to avoid? What pain, what emotion do you get to avoid in that moment by using those tools of busying yourself or food? Yeah. And continue asking that. And I would journal on that, write it down, and you would be amazed when you allow yourself the space to actually write it down. It might be like, oh yeah, my answer's 2 words, or I don't really know what my answer is. And then you open the space for yourself to express, for yourself to be seen and heard, which is often what we're deeply craving from someone outside of ourselves, yet we're not even giving it to ourselves in the first place. Information will begin to pour out. Yeah, I've had times where there's like a 20-page journaling session and I'm just like, oh my gosh, and this, and this, and this. Oh my gosh, this is making so much sense. I understand myself so much more now. I feel heard. I feel seen. I feel listened to. I feel validated. Yeah, I feel confident instead of now second guessing or gaslighting myself, yeah, in what I feel to be true. And so that's what I invite you into around that. And the other thing, another layer that may be relevant for the women that have asked these questions is, are you giving yourself pleasure throughout the day? Right? And pleasure can look like so many different things. It might be a swim in the ocean. It might be a nap in the afternoon. It might be a conversation with a friend. It might be riding your bike down the street. And we talked about this on the Reveal and Rise call last night, feeling the breeze in your hair and feeling that freedom and liberation. It might be dancing. Like, what do you desire? What do you want? What feels like fun? What feels like playfulness? What feels like pleasure? What feels like the opposite to obligation and responsibility to you? Because if you're not giving yourself enough of that throughout the day and throughout the week, you're going to want to steal it from other spaces, right? So let me just have the chocolate because it feels like a bit of an adventure. Let me just have the ice cream or the cake because I get to feel like I'm free in that. I get to feel unburdened in that. I get to feel wild in that. Let me just have a little bit more time before I go to bed because I haven't had any time for myself today. I haven't done anything that lights me up. I haven't done anything that's felt fun. So I'm not ready to go to bed yet. So those can be some other considerations to balance and begin shifting how it is you're showing up within your day and within your week so that you also don't need those things as much. Okay, my love, I have covered almost all of the questions. And if I haven't, it's because it's been very similar. So for example, there's a question here that says, believing a false perception of myself instead of believing in who I truly am. I'd speak into that the same way that I spoke into how to move the energy of I can't and I'm not enough. The last one that I want to speak into is this: self-sabotage in love. I notice my thoughts going, sign me up for more pain, go on. And I'm like, why? Why is that coming up? Now, this is also similar to a question that I have already answered around the upper limit. And let me just have a little look at these other questions. And also similar to the friendship one, right? Because how does that work really well for you, right? When you tell the story of like, oh yeah, here we go again, sign me up for more pain, let's go. How does that work so well for you, right? What I imagine is it's familiar. What I imagine is you get to feel in control. What I imagine is you don't have to take a risk. What I imagine is you get to be right. Yeah, you get to control the narrative. You don't have to feel uncertain. You don't have to open your heart. You don't have to risk heartbreak. You don't have to let someone see you in the most intimate way possible. It doesn't get more intimate than in love. Yeah, intimate love. So an intimate relationship or a life partner or a short-term partner also. There is no moment where as a woman we are more exposed and we are more vulnerable and we are more seen than when we're being physically intimate with another person, right? That can feel like a lot to hold. And some of you won't even be in touch with that, right? Because if you're venturing into that space, there will be numbing techniques happening, right? But for the woman who deeply craves and really wants to be fully seen and unconditionally loved, it's going to feel safer to assume that's not available, right? Because what happens on the other side of losing that, this is why this conversation is similar to the upper limit one, is you would need to trust yourself that you could move through that. You would need to trust yourself that you are so brilliant. You are so beautiful and sexy and amazing. You're so intelligent. You're so incredible. You're so phenomenal as a woman that you can navigate that and you can recreate an experience just as good or even better. Right? And that takes a lot of you being on your team. That takes a lot of you being willing to feel the full range of emotions, the painful and the pleasurable, right? So it's going to be very safe if you're a woman who's not willing to feel the painful emotions or you don't have the skill set to do that. It's very resourceful of you. And it's a very skilled way to create safety to pull out before you're even in that scenario where you would have to show up for yourself, where you would have to trust yourself, where you would have to reaffirm how brilliant you are. Yeah. And so there's a lot of us that are saying, I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to feel understood. I want to be loved unconditionally. I want to be loved. I want to be able to be who I am. Right. And yet we're not willing to step in and be that woman who is able to be seen, right? Because she's being her, or able to be heard because we're not using our voice, or able to be understood because we're asking someone else to mind read so that we don't have to be vulnerable and share what's alive for us, share what's true for us, share what's real for us, share what's hurting. Yeah. And so a question that I just adore, yeah, and that I've used a lot in my life is, who would I need to be that is different to who I have been so far for me to get a different result? Yeah. So my love, if you, and I have a feeling I know who I'm speaking to here. I've removed all the names so I can't see, but I believe it's one of my beautiful clients. Who would you have to be that's different to who you are right now if you were to let go of the story and of the assumption that you're signing yourself up for more pain? What does that woman say? What does she feel? How does she behave? What are the qualities of that woman? Yeah. How does she respond to rejection? What's her story about rejection? How does she define what it means to be successful as a woman and as a vulnerable woman? Yeah. Who do you need to be that's different to who you've been up until this point to get a different result? I am going to leave this conversation here, my love. I have enjoyed it so much, and I thank you enormously from my heart for all of your contributions and for being willing to ask for what it is that you need. Thank you for being here for this conversation, my love. If you would like more free resources, if you'd like to learn about my programs or coaching opportunities, you can find all of that information at my website, gemmahanley.com. I'll link it below in the show notes. And if you would like to connect daily, head over and find me on Instagram. My handle there is Gemma E. Hanley, and I reply to all of my DMs there personally. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone. You never know who needs to hear one little thing to take their day from feeling stuck and heavy to light and free. See you on the next one.